last-minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning, Ryan. It's okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always
Nice,
as simple
Ryan.
as 1,
What's
2,
up?
3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Random Fit. I am Wendy Batts here with Ken Miller, my friend and co-host. Ken, how are you?
I'm doing great, Wendy. How are you doing?
I'm great. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about stop getting blindsided by your workouts. And this actually was inspired by a client of mine because I do manual therapy on a lot of individuals. And then based on my timing at the gym and my multiple jobs and all the things that I have going on in my life, I'm not the one that always does the personal training aspect if it's somebody that needs both. And I work with a great group of trainers. I feel very confident in handing these individuals over. And there's one particular client who has done a huge transformation, has lost a ton of weight, looks incredible. He is in his early 50s. And when you look at him, you're like, wow, he's got a great body. He moves well. He's very strong. And it's way different than if we look at it, where he started and where he is today. However, yesterday, while I was at the gym, he came in and he just looked like he had been beaten down. And it was interesting because I see him once a week, and I had missed a week because, well, he had missed a week. I didn't miss the week, and he was traveling. And so when he came back in, he works with this trainer 6 days a week, and he's retired. He was very fortunate to be successful, retired at an early age, and gets to travel and do a lot of fun things. However, what he was saying was he just felt like he couldn't move and everything had been hurting for the last few days. One of the number one complaints from this particular trainer is he no longer wants to do the foundational exercises. He no longer wants to do the mobility drills. He no longer wants to work on the stabilization stuff. He just wants to lift heavy because when he lifts heavy, he saw the transformation really take place. However, he didn't really think about 4 to 5 weeks prior to lifting heavy. He did nothing besides build a strong foundation for him to be able to lift that max load. Now he just wants to lift heavy every day. He argues with his trainer. He says, I'm paying you. This is what I want. She does it. Now he's miserable. So here we are.
Yeah. I think if you're a personal trainer or new to personal training, just speak to the personal trainers in the audience right now. If you haven't seen this person, you're gonna see it.
You will.
For those points that you bring up, Wendy, they built up that foundation. They were able to do things that they weren't able to realize before. But unfortunately, there's a little disconnect on, hey, we did this, and then this was able to happen. And then they get addicted. They think that, okay, this is if this is what I did to get this strong, I'm just going to keep doing it. And if you're a personal trainer, that's the first point of education. Before power and strength, you need stability. And for those of you that aren't personal trainers and you're just an avid exerciser, an exercise or fitness enthusiast listening to both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller, here on Random Fit, you have to keep going back and forth on those foundations. Now, to your point, Wendy, and back to the episode here, we are talking about some fundamental things that have to be done or should be done in order for us to maximize our results. But oftentimes, and when you and I talked about this, Wendy, as far as stop getting blindsided by your workouts because you think you're doing X amount of work to get X results. But there's some things that have to happen foundationally for you to get to where you're going. You might still be getting a little bit stronger, a little bit more powerful. Maybe your endurance is a little bit better because you are working hard. But are you truly realizing the results that you can achieve if you paid it a little bit of attention to a few foundational, fundamental things that can actually get you to where you're going faster, if not more efficiently, at least.
Well, and this particular trainer is like, I need your help. When he gets on your table, you have an hour with him where it's just him and I. And again, I can throw an elbow in there and hurt him a little more if needed, or I can get into a certain area where I know it's going to hit a trigger point until he listens. And it's one of those things that I'm going to say to you guys as well, whether you're with a trainer, you're a personal trainer, or if you've just hit that plateau. As your body starts adjusting to whatever demand you're doing on it every 4 to 6 weeks, you need to do something new to challenge it more, because then it becomes the new norm. It gets used to it. So you stop seeing these major changes that you might have seen in the beginning. So that's number one. What are you doing different in your workouts? When a client comes in and I'm actually personally training or doing personal trainer with, doing personal training with them,
Right.
then I will literally do something different, but within that certain phase of training, certain tempos, certain rep ranges, challenging balance, challenging stability and core, working on strength if that's where I'm at, or working on power. But I'm switching it up because I want the body to always be challenged. I want different muscles to work at different times. So therefore, when I do load it heavier or load it faster, I've built the proper foundation to make that happen. What ends up happening over time, if someone just lifts heavy all the time, there are these little muscles called your stabilizers that work with the prime mover. So if I'm working my chest, my anterior delt is going to have to work. If I'm pushing a load, I'm working on my shoulders, but my triceps and my biceps are also going to be involved if I'm bending and relaxing my elbow. So you've got to think there are certain muscles that have to help particular movement patterns. As those stabilizers get weaker, the prime mover doesn't get stronger. It just means then it starts to ask more muscles to help get a movement done, and muscles that shouldn't be a prime mover involved in the exercises are now involved in order to get that movement to happen. And that's where we start to see the breakdown. That's when we start to see compensation patterns. We see the rounded shoulders, the forward heads. People start getting tension headaches. Things that they don't normally have happen to them start happening because they are, number one, forgetting the mobility part and the foundation stabilizers and slow movement. Remember, more things happen when you're decelerating in life and moving in a rotational movement pattern. So in the transverse plane. So we need to make sure that our body is prepared for life, but then we're also doing things to change it or to challenge it. So we start to see those physical changes that we're hoping to either physically on the scale or whatever it is that we're trying to do.
And Wendy, so with that client that you brought up, they're training with another trainer 5-6 days a week, and then they're on your table a couple times a week?
Just once a week.
Just once a week.
Not
So
always every week either, depending
Yeah.
on the schedule. But let's say I see them 1 to 3 times a month. And that's
Right.
just doing manual therapy. So instead of using a foam roller, when I say manual therapy, I'm finding the muscles that are overactive and I'm manually going in to release them to try to help them get better range of motion, and then doing some sort of activation to try to hold that range of motion that I gained by allowing that one muscle in particular to relax.
And with that, so by the way, for you listeners here, listening to both Wendy Batts and I've had a chance. I've worked with Wendy for how long now? Almost 20 years ish.
Yes.
Yeah, long time. So if you're ever in the Atlanta, Georgia area, look her up. One of the best, if not the best, manual therapists I've ever had a chance to be on her table. When you get on there, for that guy to have a session with you 3-4 times a month, I know that he's 10 times better than he would be if he didn't see you at all. So I bring that point up because, for one, if you have somebody, a manual therapist, and they do great by you as far as helping you achieve range of motion, flexibility, getting your arms and limbs to where they need to be, awesome. Keep that person. Now, I want to just point out that why I was asking about the frequency is if they're with you 1 time a week, where they're with the trainer 6 times a week, that's 6-to-1 ratio if that client isn't doing anything for themselves. So when we talk about joint mobility, the fact that they're working on mobility dedicated mobility once compared to 6 times, that's a pretty far off big ratio, especially if they're working strength, if they're working power. So that's high intensity versus mobility, 6-to-1 ratio. And that ratio, especially if you mentioned he's in his early 50s, and I know what it's like to be in my early 50s. So from that vantage point, I'm more like 50-50. I'm working on flexibility, range of motion, mobility, almost just as half my workout is just achieving stability and flexibility. And I'm including what I do with my hypervolt, my roller, stretching, glute work, scapular work. I'm doing that just as much as I'm carrying 80, 100-pound dumbbell. So that importance of not overlooking mobility is one of those things that's basically a hidden gem. If you realize that I'm not that mobile, but more mobility means better muscle activation, better joint stability, I can actually push more weight, lift more weight, run farther without pain or discomfort. Then that's one of those hidden gems that often it's taken away more than it's adding, right? So more work doesn't mean more results, but mobility is going to be one of those blindsiding components that you think you're working hard, but the question is, are you really able to work as hard as you could to achieve the goals that you're looking for?
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because that was after explaining this. And I'm like, this individual is very, very smart. Again, already sold his business and gets it. But it's a reminder. And I made sure that the trainer was there, because she was extremely concerned that now he's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And so it's one of those things where now at the beginning of her session, she is going to take 5 to 10 minutes and volt him and stretch him, and then go in and do different types of, again, she's manually stretching him, and then she's going to have him do some dynamic warm-up stretches and a routine, and then get into whatever it is that they have scheduled for that day. I think that just got lost, because as a trainer, we're always trying to please our clients, and we want to serve them by giving them the results that they're hoping to do, or have that session that they really want to have. But this is really important to think, like you said, what is the ratio? Taking 5 or 10 minutes in the beginning and taking 10 minutes at the end. If it's an hour workout, this still leaves you anywhere from 40 to 50 minutes of a really intense exercise routine. And when I say intense, it's not lifting heavy. It's not talking, really focusing on the workout, really focusing in the gym of why they're there, working on proper mechanics, proper tempo, proper exercise selection, and then ensuring that it's done correctly. So execution is done correctly. And then giving them the recovery, if you will, which is the end part, whether it's vaulting again, rolling, stretching, whatever it is. Guys, without that, then you're not setting yourself up, if this is about you, or if you're a trainer, you're not setting your client up for success. Because if they're not going to do it on their own, but they are going to come into the gym, it's your responsibility to ensure that you're doing everything correctly. Because if he says, well, I do dynamic warm-ups right when I walk in, but if you're lacking range of motion, the definition to a dynamic stretch is to go through proper range of motion of a joint to achieve that stretch while in motion. But if you're lacking that range of motion and you're compensating doing the stretching, you're putting more stress on joints that shouldn't be stressed out by doing something like a walking lunge with rotation. If your foot's out, your knee's in, and you can't rotate, you're using your lower back, you're stressing the inside of the knee, and you're also not helping what's happening at the foot and ankle complex, which that's the very first thing as a trainer we look at. How much dorsiflexion do you have? Because if you're lacking that, it's going to affect the entire kinetic chain all the way up to your head. So it's very important that you're able to talk about this and incorporate the right strategies. So when we're saying mobility drills or whatever it is, you really need to emphasize that.
And it doesn't have to be that complicated. I know, Wendy, you just brought up a lot of exercise terminology. Ankle
I try to define it as the way, as you can tell, I was like,
know.
wait, what is happening here?
Yeah, so it turned into a tutorial on how to pass a corrective exercise test. So, but the point there being, you can get as complex as you want. You can go through a whole 4-step strategy to move better. But one example that I share with other clients is what one of my clients did. And what she did was, because she travels from the Bay Area to Boston and New York quite a bit, one of her issues was neck tension, neck and shoulder tension. And I don't know who wouldn't appreciate, or who couldn't appreciate, a good shoulder rub at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Especially if you're doing virtual meetings, if you're behind the desk and you're tapping on the keyboard. So a lot of what would take away from our session, with overhead work, pressing, she can get through 35, 45 minutes of a workout without her neck starting to kick in. So one of the things she did was she made the investment in a Theracane. So if you don't know what a Theracane is, it's basically a big hook with some handles. She had one for her home office and one for her office when she's on the road, which is almost a third, depending on the month, almost half the work week is on the other side of the country. So she had one by each one of her desks. So she's got 2 Theracanes. And what she will do after a long meeting or sitting down for an extended period of time behind the desk, she will work on those knots. So the cane with the handle, she's just putting a little pressure through the end knob of that cane into her upper traps. She'll get around her shoulder blade. And by 3 minutes of that intermittently throughout the day. So she's got a couple minutes, maybe after a morning meeting, late morning meeting, early afternoon, maybe before she goes to the hotel when she's on the road. So she gets maybe 3 or 4 2-3 minute sessions. So upwards of 8, maybe 10 minutes on a good day. She's working on taking tension off of her shoulder blade. Her scapulothoracic region is a little bit more freed up. Her neck, her cervical spine is a little bit more freed up. And she adds a couple neck stretches, only 2, maybe 3. She might get the SCM in there, the sternocleidomastoid, as she stretches out that muscle that runs from your back of your jaw to your sternum. She might get that one on a good day, but we noticed a night and day difference from what she was able to do before to what she was able to do during our sessions, because now I wasn't spending so much time relieving tension through her neck and shoulders because she had been behind the computer all week, being in the position she is within her company. But now that meant more that we could do. And my every other question wasn't, how's the neck feeling? How's the shoulder feeling?
Yeah.
Now we can actually work out. So for those of you that are thinking about this aspect of being blindsided by mobility, it doesn't take that much. If you have a couple minutes to foam roll your calf, your quads, your TFL intermittently throughout the day, those minutes accumulate throughout the day, but you'll find a huge difference in how you feel from 9 o'clock when you first clock in to 5 o'clock when you clock out. If you can intermittently disperse different mobility techniques, all you need is the ones that your body will appreciate the most. Again, we talk about getting assessed, knowing where your inflexibility lies and addressing that. If you have the opportunity to get assessed, evaluated, and figure out a routine that is specific for you, then by all means do it. But nothing wrong with a good old common neck stretch, hip stretch, foot and ankle stretch. And that's all we're talking about. It doesn't have to be a comprehensive hour-long mobility session. It can be a couple moves done throughout the day, and that's what it'll take for some of you guys to move better and keep working towards your results.
Well, and I think another, we've really, if you guys can't tell, Ken and I are super passionate about the mobility side, then I don't know what we've talked about for the last, 10, 15 minutes. But another thing that I do want to stress is also the importance of active recovery or regeneration. And so when we're talking about that, what I mean, Ken, you and I have done podcasts on Random Fit about active recovery. If you've missed it, you guys should tune back in and watch it, because we talk about different ways and different things that you can do for active recovery. But instead of always doing the HIIT workouts and intense workouts and lifting heavy and feeling broken, like if you're waking up and you're just miserable all the time, but you're going to the gym and you should be feeling better, if you're feeling miserable, then you got to take a step back and look at it. Is it a range of motion mobility issue? Or are you overtraining? Are you doing too much, too fast, and doing the same thing where your body's just not getting a chance to accept the amount of load you're lifting. And so what can you do on the times that you're not in the gym? Or even maybe instead of going and lifting heavy or doing certain workouts, you do something different, like a yoga class. Yoga classes, Pilates classes, things that kind of stretch you out, that kind of take your mind and put you into more of a mindful, peaceful moment, especially if you have a lot going on and life is pretty hectic. But if you don't even want to take a class, like I am really bad at taking classes, because then I feel like I'm listening to what the teacher says. And if she doesn't do something the way I think she should be doing something, I'm looking at her like, well, I'm taking a class from someone that doesn't know what she's talking about. So I'm not the person you want in your class unless you're dialed in. But it's one of those things where get a percussion device. Hyperice makes all of these amazing devices. We use them a lot. Ken and I both do. They've got heated heads where then you're putting heat on your muscles, foam rolling, even taking a walk or taking time to get a massage. Not necessarily someone like me that does manual therapy because it's not relaxing, but a way to get your muscles to relax. And then on top of that, you need to look at your nutrition. Are you getting enough protein to help, rebuild the muscles? And, are you getting a good night's sleep to help your mind and your body truly recover? Because if you're missing any of these components, then you will get blindsided by whatever it is that you're doing, because it really is all inclusive. So we always say it's a holistic approach, but it's more than that. It's really just, what are you doing in your life and where are things going wrong? And if you feel sore after a workout the next day, that's fine. But if it's been 3 or 4 days and you can still barely walk down the stairs, that is not a good thing. Then you did something wrong, and your body is telling you, listen, you need to take a step back and reevaluate what you're doing.
I think the aspect of recovery, it's within the fitness industry, it's something that's gotten more light shed on it over the last few years, especially as tools and technology. You and I both wear our Garmins, and it'll tell us your body battery is 3. That's
Thanks,
not
Ken.
the day. Yeah. That's 2 days ago. But that's not the day to push it. That's not the day to get under the squat rack and just pile on the weights. That's a day. You know what? A day off doesn't mean a day off. Doesn't mean you're not doing nothing. That could be, drive a little extra farther. If there's a hiking trail somewhere, if there's a beach you can access, take off the shoes, walk on the beach, go on the hiking trail, go 20 minutes out, 20 minutes back. If it's an out and back, or if it's a loop, find a distance that's appropriate for you. But maybe this is a time to decompress, not just physically, but also mentally, because I like to tell my clients that if this is what your body is feeling, there's a great chance your brain and your mind and where your thoughts are, it's not too far behind. So if your body needs a little rest, maybe it's time to give your mind a little rest and do something that offloads where you are mentally, psychologically, emotionally. Because when you work out and you work out hard, there's a certain mentality that comes with that, right, Wendy? So if I'm going to lift 300 pounds, I've got to get in the mindset of lifting 300 pounds. But my brain can only operate at that level for so long, especially if you're adding family and work and social and all these other, finances, all these other stresses that come into play. Active recovery is a time to internalize and think about yourself versus the output of running a certain distance, lifting a certain weight. Now we can, as our friend Derek likes to say, there's a workout, but then there's also a work in. How are you at actively putting energy back into your body? And this is the mobility work. This is the yoga. And you and I, Wendy, we work with enough. I've worked with enough athletes in my past, and you work with a lot more professional athletes now. And then tell me if I'm wrong on this, but the last few professional NBA guys that I've had a chance to work with, one of the things that they tell me is, hey, if I knew about yoga, Pilates, water therapy earlier in my career, I could have got another 5 more years on the court, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. Is that what you've heard too?
100%. And I will tell you this, especially my NBA guys, they do a day of yoga. That is on their on their list of things that they do for their active recovery. Sundays are their yoga days. And so it was one of those things when we first talked about it, like, hey, let's do something different. I have had better range of motion on Mondays, better output on Mondays because with those guys, I do both. So I'll do some manual work and then I put them out on the court or in the gym or whatever it is that wherever I'm working with them. And I have seen a substantial increase in weight, how they feel, how they move, and just their attitude in general. So big component of active recovery. I know we talk about it a lot, but I think that's a huge thing that sometimes people get blindsided because they just don't do enough of, or they don't really think about what they can do in order to still be moving. Because remember, movement is medicine. We've talked about that as well. But I think too, that goes hand in hand with both the workout side of it, something that goes into active recovery, something that is like a huge part of yoga. One of the last things, and this is a way to tell how in shape you are when you're doing certain things, is breathing. And we've had Michael Watts on. He's one of our breathing experts. I love Mikey to death. And he has sent me breathing workouts because he's like, Wendy, you are always on the go. You need to take some time to relax. You are literally like this Energizer bunny that never relaxes. And I'm like, I can't. I just don't know how. So I was honest. I really didn't know how to take time to do breathing that was going to just bring me from, being that, like you said, when you're working out, always like on the go, fight or flight, to this relaxation, like just taking some time to relax and like get into that mind frame. So if you're working out and you're doing running, if you're biking, if you're rowing, you're doing different things. There are different types of breathing techniques that you want to consider. But one of the things that I do, especially in the assessment component, and I don't know if you do this, Ken, yourself, but if I'm doing running drills, I'm watching how they're breathing. Because if they're breathing in and out through their nose and they're not using their mouth, that shows me that they are breathing very, very well. And that they don't have to, if you have a mouth breather where you are literally like, and they're huffing and puffing, then I know that I really need to work on the cardiovascular side of their programming as well. But I mean, I have even had people tape their mouth and get on the bike and do sprints. It is extremely difficult to do, but it really does help somebody build, especially on the performance aspect of breath control.
And the aspect of timing, I think, is very important. So again, getting into recovery, active recovery, and regeneration, I just have my clients, what I'll have them do is I'll have them put one hand on their chest, one hand on their belly button, flat and open, and all their hands are doing, they're not pressing, they're not pulling, they're not squeezing or anything. They're just looking at the timing of the raising of their hands. So if they're laying on their back, you should feel your belly button distend towards the ceiling. So if you're laying on your back, your face up, I should feel my hand that's on my belly first, and then I should feel my hand on my chest second. So when we're talking about breathing, for what you're talking about with nasal breathing, they're breathing through their nose, and we're just assessing timing. So if I feel my belly distend, that means my diaphragm is dropping, right? My diaphragm drops, it's squishing the organs down beneath it, and it's gonna just, the only place to go is my hand's gonna rise. So my organs are gonna compress, my hand is gonna rise, and then my chest moves. So the diaphragm diaphragm is the primary breathing muscle. So as that drops, my belly button distends, and then I should feel my hand on my chest move second, right? And where we have a little bit of dysfunction is when the chest moves, or even the traps move, they start to elevate. So if I can't expand downward through my belly or outward through my rib cage, my tertiary, my next level of breathing muscles are the ones around my neck, which now, if I can't go down, I can't go out, I have to go up. But guess what? These muscles aren't really built for that. But we carry so much tension in the neck, these muscles become, when people shrug when they breathe, or their head moves forward when they breathe, it's because these muscles are tight. They're now trying to lift the rib cage up versus distend the belly button down first. And it's all about timing. So nasal breathing is important, but even something as simple as just watching the belly distend first, chest second, and hopefully you don't have too much shrugging through the upper traps, but big muscles before the secondary, before the tertiary muscles, but watching the timing of your breathing. So breathing dysfunction, I like to look at as well as breathing through the nose, because all the benefits of breathing through the nose, for those of you that don't fully understand what happens through the nose and the mouth, is that when you breathe through your nose, you're going to moisten. You're gonna for one circulate the air through your nostrils, and then with how the structure of the nasal passage is, you're going to circulate the air. You're going to moisten the air, so when it gets to the lungs, it's already got moisture on it. But it's also a filter system, so all the particulates in the air, they're going to get filtered through the nose. But it also warms the air as it comes down, versus if you're breathing through the mouth, now all that air just goes straight to the lungs. So that filter, that warming, that moisture, it's absent. So the lung will operate better once we have that swirling and twirling of the air through the nasal cavity, swirling and twirling of the air through the nasal cavity as you breathe. But it's also, if you're trying to down regulate that sympathetic, that stress response, breathing through the nose is going to facilitate that.
Well, and I think that's important, because if any of you guys have ever done competitive dancing, competitive cheering, anything that with those particular sports, and sometimes even in gymnasts, depending on who the coach is, they tell you to breathe wrong. And I know I learned to breathe incorrectly. And so going through and learning how to properly breathe using my diaphragm and my stomach, and what you just said, that ratio with your belly extending and your chest not moving until it's secondary. Guys, a lot of people are taught the other way. Like for us, we had to look a certain way. We all had to match, and our bellies never moved, which sounds terrible. But I learned how to breathe through my chest and use my neck muscles. And as you guys know, I have said many times, I've had neck issues ever since. Now, granted, there's other components to why my neck hurts or had issues, but I had to really focus on that. So if you notice that your client can't really move their belly when they're breathing, and they are chest breathers, it's very important. And I'm telling you firsthand, because this happened to me, it's very important that you teach them the right way to breathe. And then make sure too, when they're doing different workouts, really trying to emphasize the importance of when they should inhale, when they should exhale, and to what kind of tempo works best for whatever it is that you're doing. So really glad that you went through those mechanics, Ken, because I'm telling you, if we learn the wrong way, it's hard to break that habit. And I didn't break it till I was in my late 20s, by the way, late 20s.
It's something that if it's not in the first session with a new client, it's within the second session that we talk about how to breathe when to breathe. Because if you're actually doing cardio, big part of the determination of how intense you're going is how fast or how long can you go breathing through your nose before you have to open up your mouth to get that air. So that's going to be one of the ways that I work on with my clients. Their conditioning is their ability to use the nasal passage and breathing through there versus, mouth open and having that inefficient breathing pattern. So I think, Wendy, we covered quite a bit when it comes. All right, we stop getting blindsided by your workouts.
Yeah.
So with that, if you look at your mobility, if you think about your recovery, regeneration, active recovery is important. Again, day off isn't just a day off, but here, one of the hidden components of maximizing your results in the gym, we need to look at breathing, right? You can't live without it, but you also don't perform as good as you possibly can without it as well. So thanks, Wendy, for sharing your insight when it comes to avoiding getting blindsided in your workout. So if you're not seeing what you want to see in the timeline that you want to see, look at any one of these components that we've talked about. And hopefully, if you tap that into your workout routine, into your planning, then your results will skyrocket. So for those of you that have listened to us, both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller here on Random Fit, thank you for sharing your time with us and letting us impart our knowledge on stopping getting blindsided by your workouts. So if there's anything else you want us to talk about here on Random Fit, let us know, reach out, message us, and let us know other topics you want us to talk about on Random Fit. So like, follow, subscribe, share, download, comment. Let us know how you like this information. We get messages all the time, so let's keep that going. So until next time, everybody, take care and be well.